Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Fruition's latest episode of Diary of a CIO. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest today, Jenny Wood. Welcome, Jenny. Jenny is Group Chief Information Officer at the Skipton Group, who are the parent company for Skipton Building Society. And Jenny brings with her an impressive track record in transforming technology landscapes in the financial services sector. Before taking the reins at Skipton, she led digital innovation as the Chief Operating Officer at Digital X at NatWest. And now she's driving a bold, people-first technology strategy that's modernising Skipton's digital capabilities. So we will kick off with our first question. Always like to talk about at this stage in the podcast a bit about your journey into technology leadership and how you got here. Was there a kind of pivotal moment for you, Jenny, when you knew you wanted to become a CIO? Was that your kind of childhood dream to move into tech leadership?
It's really interesting. If you'd asked me what I wanted to be in year 10 or year 12, I would have said either a lawyer or a physiotherapist. Right. Technology wasn't even on the radar. And then I had this fabulous careers counsellor who said to me, "You like solving problems. You're smart. You can do maths. Why don't you look at these technology degrees? They're trying to encourage more women into technology." This was a long time ago. And so I started in technology because it looked like something that was going to help me learn and something that I could do something that was going to make an impact with. And as I then went on in technology, at that stage, technology was very different in the way that it ran to today. So I made a jump, and I jumped outside of technology and ran some businesses and did some call centre work and ran the call centres for a small telco. And it wasn't until I was looking at my next career option after doing that someone said to me, "You really like people and you like change. We've got a really challenging technology transformation that we'd like to make. Would you come back in as a divisional CIO and actually lead that for us?" And that was the point where, for me, technology became more about the building things to the people transformation. And people are really complex and tech's really complex. And what technology lets you do is actually bring that together to create something different that people couldn't imagine. And that was when I decided that technology was where I wanted to be.
Wow. And did that experience working for businesses outside of technology put you in good stead for your first CIO role?
Massively, because one of the things that technologists often don't do well is express what the business problem is, what the customer problem is. And so having worked the other side, having been the person on the call centre, running the call centres where my teams needed to answer the questions, needed the technology, where we were the people who did the billing for the telco, where we were the people who put on the services. And for a while I ran HR for that company, smaller company. But that breadth of knowledge actually lets you look at what the real problem is and start thinking about things really from a customer colleague perspective versus a what's the technology solution. And too often technology is actually not the solution to your problem. It's just that we're probably not asking the right question.
Yeah. You've worked across different continents, different sectors, different styles of businesses. What's been the most, game-changing career decision that you've made? You probably alluded to that earlier.
There's been a few of them because I'm a person who believes in working forward. And so the first big jump for me was from a large financial services company where I jumped to a small telco in Australia. And so I went from being right in the middle of a technology team to being closer to the top and closer to the bottom. But that gave me such a breadth of experience. I got to run a small company, and as we've talked about, I got to run customer operations and HR for that company. And then I made a jump back to big, and that jump I talked about back into technology. And at that stage, I wasn't sure whether I'd go back to technology. I thought I might stay in business operations and do more COO roles. And then the decision to pack up and move the family to Edinburgh. We'd never been to Edinburgh before as a family. I'd been once for less than 8 hours. And we moved to Edinburgh to do a different role in a different country. Was, again, it gave me experience and it gave me breadth. But what it's let me do is ask questions from very, very different perspectives. And so I can be relied upon not to be the one who asks the same question as somebody else, because I haven't had the same experience and the same background as somebody else. So all of those things add up to what's given me the basis for my career.
And are there key differences in how a business operates in Australia versus how a business operates here in the UK?
There are some differences. So firstly, let's be upfront. The regulation for financial services is a little bit different between the two, and the regulation for telecommunications. But most of the tech stuff is fairly similar. We live in a global world. So, your products are pretty much the same products. You're answering many of the same questions in terms of technology. The businesses that you work for are different, and the customers' expectations are different. So there's different financial services products. There's different needs in the community. The culture of the community is different. But also what's different is the work expectation and the way people interact in a work environment. Australia is probably a little bit more black and white, a little bit more forthright, a little bit more comfortable with conflict. Some environments in the UK are, some aren't. And so some of those things are the more complex things as you change cultures and as you change companies, because different companies have different cultures that you need to work through.
I'm surprised by that. I thought Australia would be more laid back in terms of some of the business cultures that you might have experienced.
In different ways, okay? So probably more laid back in terms of, would you be a bit more casual in a meeting? Yes. Would you perhaps be a bit more casual in the way you express yourself? Would you? All of those things. But when it comes to pace, I'd probably say, the organisations I've worked for in the UK have had a very different pace and different expectation to the ones that I've done in Australia. But the roles are different as well. So some of that could be role-based.
Yeah, it's interesting that your experience in the UK has been post-COVID as well. I wonder how that might have differed if you'd experienced working life here before COVID, whether the pace has changed.
I did 3 years before COVID.
Oh, okay.
So I lived COVID here.
Right. Okay, fine.
So from that perspective, it is just it's just a different culture.
Yeah.
And it's those things that are a little bit out of focus. And the one I like to use is, if I ask you what colour crisp packet is salted crisps, already salted, you'll give me a colour.
Red.
Yes. For me, that's blue.
Right.
And so it's those little things that actually often make a difference, because you don't know that they're different. And
but
so
they
it's
just
not,
are.
it's not completely different. It's
Yeah.
just slightly nuanced around the edges.
Yeah.
But it's lovely. I've loved my time in the UK, and I've loved all the people in the companies that I've worked for.
And what part of your background, personal or professional, do you think gives you a leadership edge that perhaps others might not expect?
So the breadth of what I've done is one thing. And so, I have run call centres, and I have had experience running HR. So that breadth, I think, is something that gives me an edge. I think the other thing is my insatiable curiosity. And it's my willingness to learn, and it's my willingness to ask questions. And I'm always asking questions. So why does that work that way? Why does that work that way? Why do we do it that way? And those sorts of things mean that you can create something different. But you also can lift people up when you do it, because you can ask the questions in terms of the things that they learn with you, or you can express what you're thinking in terms of the way someone else might see it without expecting them to know how you're seeing it at that point in time. I think that, for me, is the big thing that gives me the edge.
And where does that curiosity stem from? When did it? Is it your childhood? Is it how you were brought up? Is it your schooling? What?
I'm a third child, so I'm the youngest child, which probably helps. Always grew up in a really supportive environment, was always able to ask questions. My dad was a frustrated, he was a chemical engineer, but he would love to build dams and boats and things like that. And, half the time I was able to help him fix the things that he wanted to do. But for me, it's always been about learning, and it's always been about just asking those questions. And I've had the environment where people have been supportive about asking those questions, and people have always been willing to try and give me answers. And that's really important as you grow up. And what I love in my kids is that insatiable curiosity that I can see in them, their willingness to try things, their willingness to learn, because the environment we're in adapts so quickly that if they don't have that, they can't learn and adapt and change as the environment that they live in changes.
And how do you continue with that learning that you're so passionate about now when you've got such a busy job, life, home, family situation? How do you find time to do that?
At home, it's through my kids. It's through the conversations we have around the table. It's, how do I see what they're learning, because they learn things that we don't know, even as simple as sort of what's the new music, but some of the things they experience in terms of school and technology and the things they're exposed to. I once went and got to meet Pepper in San Francisco, and I messaged my kids saying I got to meet a fabulous little robot, and my daughter said, yeah, we met her a week ago. We saw her on video, and it's those sorts of conversations that are really important. And around work, it's talking to people and being open to talk to them. So we deal with lots of vendors and partners, and having conversations that are open conversations where you go into it saying, what can I learn? What can you tell me? Not thinking we know all the answers. I use a lot of podcasts. I love sessions where I get together with peers and colleagues in the same industry where we can share or I can learn from them, because those are the sorts of things where you do learn together and you lift each other up. So I use all of those things. I'm an avid reader, but at the moment, because I do a bit of traveling, podcasts are my go-to.
And what's your go-to podcasts that you might listen to?
It depends. My CISO hates the fact that I have a number of security podcasts that I go to, and he knows when I've been traveling because he'll get a series of questions from me around them. I listen to an American one, which is This Week in Technology, which is about the same length as my commute, and I sort of have it on as background, and it's just a conversational what's happened in the press around technology that week. I love my history podcasts. The Rest is History is one of my favourites.
So it's not always tech and work.
No, it's definitely not always tech. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be very, very boring. So wide variety of things.
And I guess that's just making most of the time that you've got free.
It is. And recognising
travelling and having a gap.
Yeah. So the days where I could sit and read a book probably are fewer, but getting more as my kids have grown up. And so it does need to be something you can do asynchronously, or something you can do while you're doing a chore around the house or travelling or gardening or walking to work, those types of things.
Amazing. So coming on to talk about your current role at the Skipton Group, where you're responsible for a pretty significant digital transformation of an organisation that's 172 years old. So I can imagine steeped in history and legacy processes and kind of methods of working that are kind of, I guess, embedded in the depths of that organisation. So first of all, the Skipton Group, I thought you worked for Skipton Building Society, but the Skipton Group is a little bit more than that, isn't it? Tell us a little bit about the breadth of your role.
Yeah, so the Skipton Group is a group of 5 companies. So we have Skipton Building Society, we have the Connells Group, which is the largest real estate agency in the UK. We've got Jade, which is a software engineering company based in New Zealand. We've got Skipton Business Finance, which does asset finance effectively for businesses and trade finance for businesses. And we have Skipton International, which is an international bank based in the Channel Islands. And so between this, whilst we're the 4th largest building society is the Skipton Building Society, we're actually about the size of a FTSE 80 or a FTSE 90 company, depending on the day. We're a mutual. We were built for our members. We were built to try and make sure that people had access to homes, people have access, the ability to grow their money for their future, to save for their future, and that membership matters. And part of mutuality is that return to the community, and is that advocating for the community in terms of what they do. So with my role at Skipton Group, I'm the group CIO, so I'm directly the CIO for the Building Society, and we run a loose group. So each of the different companies has their CIOs who are accountable to their chief executives for the work they do. But we work together really tightly on where could we share common architecture, where could we buy together, how do we learn from each other, how do we share skills, and how do we think about the data asset that we hold as a group and effectively work together to create something that's bigger than the sum of its parts. But all of those things are there to help, as I said, help more people get homes, and focus on first homeowners is our current strategy to help people save for their future and to return to the community through the membership neutrality that we've got.
So there's a real kind of, I guess, purpose-driven focus to Skipton as an organisation. How do you start to tackle modernising technology in an organisation like that without losing what makes it, I guess, trusted and timeless, I guess, and also making sure that you're still delivering purpose and having that objective of helping people get on the property ladder and making sure people are supported with their savings, etc. How do you kind of tackle that?
It really starts with what our members want.
Right.
And it starts with the things that are important to them. And we spend a lot of time with our members actually understanding what's important to them. They value being able to walk into our branches. They value their passbooks. They value the human interaction. But they also value safety and security, and they value education and advice, which we're uniquely placed to be able to give because we still have a tight advice network. So when you start thinking about digital transformation, actually you start thinking about what do our members need and what are the things that we need to have in place to give them what they need. We're very lucky in many ways because what I walked into was an organisation that was had started its transformation journey, but was focused very much on how it uplifted itself on the next phase of that journey. And so we've put in place some new digital capability, and we'll have more of that coming out for our members, recognising that that's not the only channel for our members. Our members really enjoy talking to our people, but it's there when they need it. We've done a lot of work around customer, so we can make sure we're understanding our customers, and when they want to talk to us about education or advice, that our colleagues have the tools at their fingertips to have the right conversations with our members and the capabilities that they've got. And then you have the underlying infrastructure that sits underneath it. And we've done a lot of investment in moving towards cloud and in making sure that the underlying components we've got are modern, don't have tech debt in them. And I'm very lucky because my core banking platform actually comes from Jade, who's our software company. So I'm in the privileged position that my core is one that I actually have ultimate control over. So many of the pieces are there. The big thing that we've focused on beyond the delivery of the transformation in each of those components that we had in play is how we change the way we work and how we think about becoming more agile and adaptable as a company. Because the challenge in today's environment is that you can't just keep doing what you've always been doing. And one of the beauties of Skipton Group is with our breadth, we can do things differently. And so we've done a lot of work on our people and our culture around being agile. So we've got a really good implementation of SAFe for doing agile. But the really big uplift for us is how we now take that cultural journey around being agile, being innovative, and thinking about the next thing that's going to make a difference to our colleagues and to our members.
So kind of transforming into an agile business across the entire group as opposed to just in technology.
Correct.
And how's that going?
So again, really lucky because it's led from the top. I work for a CEO who fundamentally believes that our agility from our businesses is one of the key things that's a differentiator. And so the agile transformation that we've done is business in. Right. It's not just technology. So we've managed to bring together value streams or product streams that are fully organisationally populated with people from the business, people from risk, from HR, from security, from technology, and they're all focused around common goals, around a corporate plan that lets us make sure that we're doing the work we need to do to actually achieve the goal we need for our colleague and for our member. And we're about 2 years into that journey. I've been in Skipton for a year. It had probably started 6 to 9 months before I started. And being 2 years into that journey, we've got a lot of the processes and the structures, a fair amount of the culture, but we've got to practice, we've got to learn, we've got to iterate. And that's actually what agility is about. It's the learning and adaptation. And we're starting to see some of that come through, which is really pleasing.
And have you got I guess I can imagine you inherited an existing team of people that were used to kind of, I guess, the old ways of working. How have you kind of brought those people on that journey with you?
Yeah, the Skipton team has always valued learning in a way that I've been really impressed with. And so the broader team has said that, if you look at things like cloud, we've done a huge amount of training of our people to ensure that they have the knowledge of how cloud works. They know what's different between physical infrastructure and cloud. And then what we've done is we've created the time and the space for them to apply the learning and to actually iterate and learn. And we've brought in some third parties at times to sit alongside us. And so we've used those types of techniques to uplift the existing teams. We did the same with Agile. We worked with a third party alongside teams to help them see what different could look like and help them understand the structures and the processes that we wanted to use. And now, as we're a little bit further on, we've brought in some new leadership and some more talent within the organisation who's been exposed to some different ways of working. And that is continuing that journey, because the challenge with transformation is you can give people knowledge and learning and you can say, I want you to do it differently. But in some cases, if you don't do that the right way, you just replace one process with another process. And what we've been very keen to do and what we've focused on over the last 12 months is that iteration of learning that embeds the reason you're doing the process and the thing you're trying to get out of it, as opposed to just the technical knowledge. And that's been really critical. And it's not just for the tech teams, it's for the business teams as well. And we all have to exercise those muscles, and it feels a little uncomfortable doing it differently. And sometimes we have to go, nope, we're going to take a step back and come back in. But that's the type of approach we've taken to the more cultural transformation of the ways of working.
So has that been critical then for you to bring in new people into your team to be able to have that blend of knowledge and experience to be able to deliver something like this? Is that key to be able to do that?
So the team that we had are really talented. I want to make sure I put that out there, and had done a lot of the work themselves. What bringing new people in does is it's people who ask different questions. If you hark back to the crisp packet, I still take chips. You don't know what questions to ask if you've never seen something different. And so what the new people and third parties bring is the different questions. They bring the knowledge that there might be a different question to ask, or there might be a different approach you could take, or there might be a different tool that you've never come across before. And so that's what's really critical and why you need to bring in external knowledge and capabilities, because what it does is it then uplifts everyone. You see different ways of doing things, you have different questions, you have different tools you can use, and then everyone can apply them. And then the questions iterate and change as you move further on in the work that you do.
And I'm assuming it's so much easier to do that when you've got that exceptionally strong talent that already exists within the organisation that understands the business and how things have worked previously. That blend is key.
It absolutely is. And the appetite. What's key is the appetite that I have in the existing team that was there when I got there to want to do things differently.
Yeah.
They weren't afraid of doing things differently. Sometimes they needed help to know what different was, But they were absolutely all up for doing things differently. And it's what I've loved about Skipton, having been there 12 months now, is that aligned culture and that hunger to actually deliver something different, but the openness to try to do it differently.
Sure. I loved how you talked about that the members help to come up with what the strategy for the business looks like and what it is that they want and need from you as an organisation. And obviously it's important to them that they maintain some of the more, I guess, traditional practices, being able to walk into a branch and have a conversation. Tell me about some of the new digital experiences for your members that they're now benefiting from that isn't compromising on some of those more traditional, I guess, touch points that they want and need.
Yeah, so one of the things that our members have asked for is for us to help them save for their future lives. It's one of our purpose. One of the things we've recently deployed is a new customer engagement platform. And what that does is it frees up our colleagues in our branches to actually have better educational conversations with our members when they come in to help them work out how they could save for the future. And so we have a review that we happily run with them through the new tooling that we've rolled out for our colleagues that then lets us have the right conversation around how they make the most of their money. We're very lucky in that we've actually also got an advice network. We were one of the few who retained an advisor network. And so through that, if the right thing to do is to pass them through to an advisor, we're able to do that. But it lets it happen at the point that they're dealing with our frontline staff or our call center staff when they previously couldn't. The other big thing that I think we're incredibly proud of is the way we've used data. And we've rolled out an affordability index. And our affordability index is a little bit different to everyone else's because what we've done is we've used our data, Connell's data, and data from the broader community through Oxford Economics to look at how affordable housing is for people who live in particular regions. So we've looked at the cost of living, we've looked at the cost of rental, we've looked at the cost of buying, the cost of mortgages, average salaries in those areas, and we've said, here is how affordable it is for people to buy in areas. And we use that to do three things. So one of which is we advocate for policy change with the government and across the different aspects, the different groups that lobby into those spaces. The second of which is we use it to create new products. And so products like our track record mortgage, our recent deferred payment mortgage have all come from the data that says, how do we help more people get into homes? How do we make it more affordable? What areas are people struggling with? And what are the data characteristics of the people who can't get into homes? And how could we help create those products for them? And the third is we've actually made it a tool available for our brokers and for general members and customers so people can have a look themselves and look at where it is affordable to buy homes. And so if you live in a particular region, what does it take to buy a home where you live today? Or are there regions around you where you might need to have a look and potentially maybe go a little bit further afield? And so that use of data is, for me, something that's really unique, but it's a fabulous illustration of where, as a group, we can do something that others can't.
Yeah, sounds amazing. And is that something that's available just on your website?
Yep.
So
Skipton Group.
Go on there and...
Skipton Group website has the affordability index. We've just come out with round 2. Round 3 will come out in about 6 months.
So I could look at, like, say I want to stay living in Leeds, but I live in this suburb here, and it would give me an idea of house prices in a different area of...
And the affordability of that.
Right. So lots of things that you're doing around supporting customers and members. I guess, is there kind of one move that you've made at Skipton in your role as CIO that's ensuring the transformation sticks, that it kind of works? Is there kind of a principle that you apply?
Yeah. For me, it's the focus on being agile rather than the implementation of agile. I arrived and we had a great safe implementation. It was picture perfect, great value streams, but we actually hadn't made the cultural move to managing the way we were doing work and the way that we were thinking about choosing the work that we do. And my people were telling me that it was just too much work, because Agile gets relentless, because you don't stop. You're in your 2 weekly sprints if you're doing sprints. You're delivering your next feature. It can feel really relentless. And unless you're doing the right grooming of your backlog, unless you've set your work limits the right way, unless you've got permission to balance the work in progress thresholds you've got, being agile is really hard, because you don't have the time or the space to do that. And so for me, the big thing was actually to give my team some permission to reduce the work in progress limits that they had, to reduce the capacity that they were putting into their sprints, but in conjunction make it very clear that stability and safety is not an option, that the priority for us is the stability and safety of our systems. We value the operations. We value ensuring that that's working. But then what we need to do is we need to do our change in a measurable, manageable way that leaves time for learning, leaves time for improvement. You can always pull more work right. You don't want to be pushing work left. Sure. And so for me, that's one of the smallest but biggest statements that my team's actually telling me has made a difference. Sure. It's given my ops teams hope and the ability to stand behind the things that they consider important. And it's given my engineering teams and the business teams clear expectations around what they can expect to get delivered, but also their choices around how they deliver it and the pace they deliver it at.
And I'm assuming you have to adapt your leadership style when you're in that stage of a transformation, when you're trying to get an organization to adopt a whole new different way of working. How do you think your team would describe your leadership style?
So,
I know we've got a few points. I'm joking.
Yeah. You've probably got a few of those. I think, they're feeling that I want pace.
Sure.
I'm feeling that I've slowed down.
Okay.
And there's always that interesting dialogue between them around, you've just got pace. One of the things I learned, and I learned it early on in sort of doing agile transformation, because I did agile transformation at NatWest and I did it at Telstra as well when I was there, is that it's never a steady state. And actually it's this slow iteration, a bit like a snowball, where you have a small group of people doing things, and then actually you've got to gather more people. And in gathering more people, you might slow down a little as you gather them, and you might go backwards actually a little, not like a snowball, probably wrong analogy, but you might go backwards a little because you have to relearn together. And then you get faster, and then you gather a few more people and you all relearn together and you go backwards and you slow down. And so one of the most important things my team asks me for is actually to be really clear on what's important, because not everything can be important, but also to be really clear on where we need pace and where we can be slow. And that's critical, because you still need to deliver, but you need to deliver the most important things, not everything. And that's what I've had to make sure I've done as I've come into Skipton.
What gets you further, do you think, as a CIO, knowing how the tech works or knowing how the people work?
Knowing how the people works. It's all people. I once had a boss say to me, tech is actually the biggest people change job you can ever have. And I sort of looked at them and I went, really? And when you think about it, you never get the right answer for your customers, your members, or your colleagues if the people in tech don't get why they're doing the work they're doing. If tech is transactional, then you get what you asked for. And sometimes we don't know what to ask for. If tech is curious, if it sees itself as part of creating the future, if it sees itself as the partner of the business, if it's curious about what the potential could be, it can be an agitator, it can be an innovator, it can be someone who stabilizes the asks and the pace. But that's all about people. It's not about the widgets of engineering. That's about people.
Knowing your people and understanding how people work is absolutely critical to your success in your role as a CIO. Do you think the role of CIO is going to continue to be less of a technically focused role then? Do you think knowing tech is even important?
I think knowing tech's critical. because the CIO is the bridge. And more actually, CIOs are coming from technical backgrounds rather than project backgrounds or pure business backgrounds. And that comes from the complexity of the environments. You know, you can't really have a conversation around cloud computing, around containerization, even around the cost of technology if you don't understand the way that it works and hangs together. You look at cyber and the complexities of cyber today, and then you take a look at things like AI and data and those components. And without understanding tech, it's very hard for you to be that bridge. But that business knowledge in a CIO is actually the thing that makes you special. And if you've got business knowledge and you've got the tech knowledge, you become the connector. And you become the enabler of your organization in a very, very different way. And so you can't be non-content anymore. You actually have to understand the content. Otherwise, you know, if you're in a regulated role, you just can't do the things you're expected to do.
Sure. But how do you do that, right? So, I mean, tech is so broad and so specialized in so many different areas and facets now. You work in a highly regulated sector, and I know you've got to have exceptional teams and exceptional people that work with you. But as a CIO, CTO, how do you maintain that level of knowledge so that you have got that content?
It's about the right questions, it's the right knowledge, it's the right base. I'm incredibly lucky. I worked at telco as well as technology, and particularly in the financial services industry. So in many ways, that has given me a breadth of conversation that allows me to ask questions that others might not ask. And in asking those questions that others might not ask, it allows me to get a good sense of where I might need to go deep, where I might need an expert. You've got to rely on other people. You've got to rely on your team. And so it isn't just your team, but you've got to rely on your team. You've got to have the right metrics and controls in place. You've got to know the things that are likely to bite you and the things that are the ones where you can actually just go, yep, I'm okay, I know that, I'll let it run to keeper. Because you can't be the expert in everything. No. But you actually just have to have a sense of what are the right questions to ask and when to go deep and when not to. And that for me is helped by, again, the breadth of my background, but also who the networks I've got, who I can rely on, the people I can talk to, who've done similar things or seen different things. And that sharing of knowledge and the sharing of traps and gotchas, for me, is one of the big things lots of people don't rely on very much. You need to rely on that network helping you and lifting you up. Because in reality, tech's tech. Your business strategy is what will make a difference. And actually, it's the execution of your business strategy that'll make a difference. But there's a whole stack we can learn from each other to lift the community up, and that dialogue between people really helps make sure that happens as well.
That's quite a unique skill set though, right? So I think that ability to ask questions at the right time in the right context and be able to spot different things, you've got to have quite a kind of lateral view of what's going on. Do you think that's something you've learned, or do you think that's something that is instilled in you as a part of your DNA as a person?
I think, you know, basically I'm curious, which helps. Yeah. I like learning. You know, I'm not someone who's going to go, yep, I'm done with that. I'm going to go and, you know, I will continue asking questions, and I don't mind going into detail on things. I think also the advantage I've had is the breadth of things that I've seen and done. And that's just experiential. You know, that is that I've worked a whole stack of different careers, a whole stack of different jobs, different companies, different environments. And none of those are ever the same. So when you swap companies, you know, after 13 years of my first company, you learn that the way that it worked previously isn't the way that it works here. So you have to go and ask a set of questions. And having done that 4 times, counting in my head 5 times now, you know, you learn the things that are going to help you get up to speed with what's different, but you also learn the commonality, you know, the things that are the same no matter where you go. And those things you've just got to check are in place and that they feel the same. And then it's the things that are different everywhere that are the things where you need to go. And so in many ways, it's an acquired skill. The way that I do it, different people do it in different ways. And every CIO is different when you talk to them, as you would know from talking to them.
Absolutely. There's some real common traits as well. Yeah, and that's definitely one of them, that ability to think in that way. And that ability to spot things is, I think, something that perhaps is instilled in people.
Or it's a trait that got them to where they are.
Maybe. Coming on to talk about your team, because obviously you've mentioned how important it is to surround yourself with exceptionally strong talent and experts in their own different facets of technology. I know you're really passionate about building an inclusive and diverse team. Let's talk about at Skipton. And lots of organisations talk about doing this, right? But what is actually working? You've got some challenges in Skipton with the geographic location anyway. That's, you've already got a hurdle. But what's working for you to make sure you do bring in that diverse thinking?
Yeah. The Australian in me says, it's not very far away. It's not very far away from Leeds.
And then you got here.
Well, it was great. I got to listen to my podcast and so forth. So one of the things for me is that not many people have thought about Skipton as a place where we do fabulous technology. And so what you've seen in the last few months, and in fact since I've started, is you've seen us get more active in the region, where we've started talking at Leeds Digital Fest, talking about what we're doing with data, talking about the transformation that we're doing for our customer engagement platform and for our call centres and for the new app and portal that we're bringing together. So we've started actually talking about the fabulous things we do. We've started talking about our data. The questions we can answer with our data. My curiosity just goes nuts. My new head of data is just waiting for me to come and, I suspect not, to come and ask him all the questions I've pent up that he'll go and find the answers for. So we've got a whole stack of things that we're now starting to talk about. We've got a fabulous culture in a fabulous environment that we sit within. So actually sharing that and showcasing it, when people come and work with us, they tend to actually want to come and stay. It's really quite interesting. And that's because it is a really good place to work. So we need to share that. We need to make that really clear. When it comes to attracting being inclusive, diverse talent, we do make sure as we're recruiting that we're bringing in the talent that can give us what we need, but also making sure that as we do that, we do it in a way that makes those opportunities well and truly available to all. And as we cast a wider net, we're seeing the attractiveness of us as an organisation being really attractive to some of that inclusive and diverse talent as well, because of the nature of the way that we work, because of the environment we're in. There's just so much going for us in that way that gives us the ability to do that. We do a lot of work in bringing together apprentices and cohorts of entry-level people who we've been working quite heavily to, particularly in data and in some of our Jade technology. We've brought in some new cohorts there where we've trained people and worked with third parties to train people. And when we do that in a socially inclusive way. And what we've also started doing in the last 12 months is working with schools in the local community around how we can show what a career in technology might look like at Skipton. Because it's not just about us bringing in diverse and inclusive talent. What I've learned in my time in technology is actually you have to uplift the entire tech spectrum of in the schools, at university, graduates from university, for females, returners from work. So it's at all spectrums across the way that you have to drive an inclusive environment that supports people in order to get that diversity into tech. And we need that diversity because our members are diverse, our customers are diverse, and our colleagues are diverse. And you can't build something for them if you're not diverse.
I think more and more people want to work for an organisation that has some alignment with their own inner belief system. I think that's a really important thing now when somebody is out looking for their next role or their next opportunity. It's really key. Do you think, some of the core values that Skipton has as an organisation, being so purpose-driven, puts you in really good stead to attract that diverse talent?
It's what I joined Skipton for.
Right.
I joined Skipton because I wanted to make a difference. I want to make a difference to people. I love leaving something different to how I found it. Hopefully better, but something that enabling things that we never imagined could happen before. Skipton has a really unique position because of our breadth to do something different in home buying and in the way that we think about education and advice and making our members' money work for them. And what I love is the fact that that's what our work is focused on. It's not focused on returning to shareholders. It's not focused on, I've done years of cost cutting, of outsourcing, of rationalizations, of those types of conversations around tech, where tech's the cost center. For me within Skipton, tech's the enabler of the purpose. And that's the work we do. The work we do is we spend our members' money to enable our purpose and the things that they want. And that's a really heavy connection. And when we talk to people and when we've been recruiting, people really want to work for a company where they can see the tangible impact of what they've done. And as a technologist, I still smile when I call the telephone banking system in Australia that I helped put in when I was in my early career. And I can tell by the structure, it's something I did. As technologists, you do want to make a difference. You want to see your stuff used. You want to do something that's going to enable something completely different for somebody and help people to live their lives. And that's what I think we can offer. And that's why I joined Skipton.
I think what Skipton demonstrated during that event that you put on at Leeds Digital Festival, and lots of the things you've done subsequently, is that you're actually out there doing things, not just talking about them. And that comes right from the top, with your CEO being present on the panel, you being involved, your head of data being involved, and I think you've been able to position yourself as a potential employer of choice that perhaps was overlooked previously. Is that fair to say?
I think it's really fair to say, because we didn't really talk about what we did. And what I've loved about Skipton and what I really like about what we're doing is we're just getting on and doing stuff. We're not talking about it. You won't see us out there talking about the new tech that we might buy that we're going to talk about putting in 6 to 12 months' time. You'll see us talking about what we've changed in the experience for people, the fact that we've put in our new CEP platform. And you asked me about digital transformation. And I sort of moved to what's important for our members, which is the way that they interact with us when they talk to us. Because that's what we're focused on. We're focused on doing the things that are going to make a difference for people and acting on them. And the work we're doing in data, we're not just talking about changing the home buying process. One of the groups that we're a part of, that's a part of us, the LMS group, has actually got out there and done changes to the process that have evidenced that we can, using the data that we've got, make it easier for people to buy a home. We've put products out that make it easier. And so that action orientation, that ability to just get on and do it, and the focus that we can have on delivering to members, for me is fundamentally important. But it gives people a real sense of achievement, that they can sit there and say, well, I've done that, and I was a part of that, and I helped create that product, and I helped make a difference.
A little bit of reflection for you, Jenny, as we kind of wrap up our session. Thinking back over your career, I can imagine it's not all been smooth sailing. There's been lots of bumps in the road. What's the one thing you wish you'd known at the beginning of your career that you know now?
Life ends up okay.
This is what I say to my son every day. Everything will be okay.
It's interesting, there are times when in the moment it feels really, really hard. But moving forward is just so important. And I can remember the first failed project I was a part of where I was the project leader, a project manager, and I got moved off that onto Y2K testing. And I didn't want to do Y2K testing. And I was devastated. I didn't get it across the line. And they got it across the line within weeks of me moving off. And I'd set it up to go. But actually, the learning I got from the Y2K testing and the support I got in actually being able to step away was a fundamental learning opportunity. The times you've been in production situations where at the time it's just felt like the problem's too big to solve, and then you've got through to the end, you get there. Sometimes when the job's not exactly what you thought it was going to be. All of those things are opportunities to learn, they're opportunities to make a difference. And in reality, they all create the person who's you. And for me, whilst there have been times where I've done a job I didn't really enjoy or done the job that wasn't ideal, it's what can you learn from it, and how do you use that to create the next thing, or to learn, or to give yourself the next step. And that's probably the reflection. In many cases, just give it a go, just do your best, focus on doing your best. And most times it works out.
Great advice. To wrap up, we've hopefully got some aspiring CIOs, CTOs, future tech leaders listening or watching this podcast on their commute home, wanting to hear kind of your words of wisdom. What's the one piece of advice that you would give somebody who's almost ready to take that next step up, so that they're at the stage where they're almost ready, but they can't quite see how they get there? What advice would you give to them?
So I talk about a career pyramid, and generally it's easier to go up if you've got breadth, okay? Because you're really wanting to have all the skills for the role that sits above you, and have as many roles above you that you could move into possible. And so my advice is take a look at what a CIO needs and make sure that you've got the breadth. Because being a CIO isn't just about the tech. It's not just about the tech strategy. It's not just about the architecture. It's a commercial role. It's a business role. It's a presentation role. It's a communication role. There's so many things about being a CIO that actually get easier if you've got the breadth. It's a risk role. And make sure that you're leveraging all of the opportunities you have to grow that broader set of skills. Because when you find a CIO role that you're interested in, or one becomes available, the more of that set of base skills that you can evidence, that you can show, the easier it will be for that to be your role. And too often people go narrow and then get frustrated by the fact they don't get promoted. So and they don't think about the breadth that's needed to do your boss's job.
Sure. So rather than looking upwards to try and move your career, maybe look left and right to see what opportunities are around that might give you that breadth.
Exactly. So if you haven't done a COO of IT role and you've only done a head of engineering role, do a CIO of IT role. Take ownership of some of the contracts. Do some vendor management. If you've never run operations but you've always run projects, go run some operations. Learn about risk management. Learn about being on the other side. Because actually a CIO sees all of those. And they have to manage all of those and balance all of those, because it's not just about change delivery, tech delivery. When you think about technology, it's often one of the biggest cost centers. It can be one of the biggest vendor management centers. Often it's got more people than most other parts of the organization. So if you don't have the skills to do that, you're not really going to be able to make that CIO jump as well.
So people have got to be really prepared to put themselves out there, out of their comfort zone, and take on things that perhaps they ordinarily might not want to do or choose to do.
And might not be in their direct line of sight.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So that curious mind is key.
Yep. And the adaptability to try things you've never tried before. I think one of the things that's got me where I am is actually the breadth. I've done COO of IT roles, so I've managed big budgets, lots of people, all of the workforce strategy, all of the vendors. I've done the tech engineering, I've coded, I've been outside of tech. That breadth makes the CIO role easier to achieve, in my view.
Jenny, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me this afternoon. And that's a wrap.
Thank you very much. Lovely afternoon.
Yeah.